Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're grappling with, well, it's not just a book of poetry. It feels more like a revolutionary act.
Oh, absolutely. We are diving deep into Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. And you're right, you can't approach this like a normal 19th century poetry collection.
Not at all.
It is, from the ground up, a kind of a raw blueprint, a manifesto, really, for a new democratic personality.
One built on this really expansive idea of self-discovery and a radical acceptance of, well, of everything, all the contradictions.
Exactly. Our sources make it so clear that this whole project was this conscious, almost belligerent effort to build an American literary identity from scratch.
So for you, our listener, our mission today is to synthesize all of this, the history, the philosophy, the personal themes, and really extract why this pioneer poet
Yeah.
is still so indispensable for understanding the American idea of the self.
And if you want to understand just how audacious this was, you have to go right back to its birth, the first edition, 1855.
Right. And Whitman, he wasn't some big literary figure at the time. He was a journalist from Brooklyn, bit of a self-promoter.
And he had to finance the printing himself. Nobody else would touch it.
What's so striking right from the jump is that he published it anonymously. But then right there on the frontispiece, there's this daguerreotype, this photo of him, dressed in workman's clothes, hat tilted, hand on his hip.
It's such a power move.
Yeah.
It's the declaration of identity without a name. He's not presenting an author. He's presenting a type of American.
A symbol.
A symbol, exactly. And the initial reaction, commercially speaking, was, well, it was devastating.
The sources all agree the book was basically stillborn.
Completely. Weeks went by. Silence. Not a single copy sold. Imagine pouring your soul into this massive work, and bookstores are literally sending the copies back.
I found this one anecdote just fascinating about the New York press.
Oh, that's a great word.
A leading daily paper got copies, and the staff would actually gather around to read it aloud.
But not because they loved it.
No, purely for ironical laughter. They used it as a button burlesque. So my question is, what exactly were they laughing at?
They were laughing at how it broke every single rule they knew. I mean, think about mid-19th century poetry. It was neat, it rhymed, it had meter.
It's polite. You had Longfellow's neat little stanzas or the stately measures of Tennyson from England.
And then they open Leaves of Grass and they find this voice that is just visceral. It's sexual, it's sprawling, it's written in these long, breathy, irregular lines. It didn't look like poetry, it didn't sound like poetry.
And it certainly didn't behave like it.
Not at all. To them, it was just chaos on the page.
So a complete failure. Commercially, critically, his life's work was basically dead on arrival. How did it even survive that kind of universal rejection?
This is where the story trends. It's one of those moments where a single, powerful voice changes literary history. The turning point was a letter.
From Ralph Waldo Emerson.
From Emerson himself, the preeminent literary and intellectual figure in America. I mean, he was the absolute authority.
What did he say?
He basically gave the entire project his blessing. He called it, and this is the quote, the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America has yet contributed.
Wow.
He offered this magnificent eulogium, and he famously wrote, "I greet you at the beginning of a great career." This wasn't just praise, this was permission. It was a signal to the entire intellectual class that this strange, rough book deserved their attention.
That must have been the crucial lift it needed. Suddenly the joke is being championed by the high priest of American letters.
Precisely. And Whitman was savvy enough to immediately publicize that letter. He even used quotes from it in later editions. That endorsement sold out the rest of the copies.
And he never really saw the work as finished, did he?
Never. He spent the rest of his life, almost 40 years, revising it, expanding it, tinkering with it.
So it became this living document that grew and changed as he did and as America did.
Absolutely. He was constantly folding in new experiences. After the horror of the Civil War, he added the drum taps collection.
And the poems about male affection, the really personal, explicit ones, they found a home in the Calamus section.
Right. And this whole process of revision just kept going until the very end. It culminated in the final authorized 9th edition, which people call the deathbed edition. It was published right around his death in 1891-92. It is, quite literally, one man's entire life contained in a single book.
Okay, let's unpack the style itself. Because that radical voice was the whole point. He wasn't just trying to join a tradition. He was trying to start a literary revolution.
And the giants of literature who came after him, they recognized the scale of that break immediately. It wasn't just a small change. It was like he cleared the land for everything that followed.
You see that in what someone like D.H. Lawrence said. He looked back decades later and called him the singular figure. Whitman, the one pioneer. Ahead of Whitman, nothing.
I mean, what incredible praise. He's saying modern literature starts here.
And even Ezra Pound, who was famously critical of almost everyone.
Right, Pound had his issues with Whitman's crudity, as he put it, but even he had to admit his foundational importance. He said Whitman was to his fatherland what Dante is to Italy.
That he established the basic linguistic reality for the entire nation.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the Anglosphere. You have someone like Pablo Neruda, writing from Chile, who said Whitman was the first to speak with a truly continental American voice. He broke the mold for the whole hemisphere.
So that voice had to come from rejecting the old forms. We mentioned the neat verse of Longfellow, the stately measures of Tennyson.
Forms which he saw as constrained, predictable, and, well, inherently aristocratic. They were rooted in the old world.
So what was his new style? How did he describe this form that just defied all the conventional techniques of poetry?
It was all about vastness. The lines were irregular lengths, they had a feeling of randomness, and he used ellipses everywhere, giving you the sense of an ongoing thought, a journey that never neatly ends.
If you're going to break rules that have existed for centuries, you better have a good reason. Why did this new democratic experiment need such a radical new style?
Whitman's argument was that the old forms were structurally incapable of holding the new world. He saw them as vessels for old, corrupt ideas. The old world, he wrote, already had its poems of myths, fictions, feudalism, conquest, caste, dynastic wars.
Narratives of hierarchy.
Precisely. And America was supposed to be a narrative of equality.
Right.
So he said the new world needed its own poems. Poems of realities and science and of the democratic average and basic equality. His lines had to be long enough to contain the physical facts of America and democratic enough to elevate the language of the street.
This focus on reflecting the messy, sprawling reality of the country leads right into the sound of his poetry, what he called vocalism. He really believed poetry had to be heard.
Yes, the text says he judged a word by its sound. He wasn't just writing for the page, he was composing for the human voice, for the open air. He was constantly reading his poems aloud to himself to test them.
That makes so much sense. If your job is to capture the democratic average, then the music of America isn't just concert halls, it's in the sounds of work, of the street.
And he deliberately elevates those sounds. The cries of fish peddlers in the market, he calls that a recitative, an opera term.
The shouts of anchor lifters on the docks become a refrain.
Even something industrial, like the sound of a train, becomes the solid roll of the train. He finds music in every single authentic American sound.
It's the sound of a country being built.
Yeah.
And this belief in the value of every little detail, every sound, it leads to his definition of what a poet even is. He's not just some clever entertainer.
No, not at all. For Whitman, the poet has this huge civic and spiritual duty. He says, look, anyone can see the beauty of dumb, real objects. A hunter, a laborer, they see that.
So what's the poet's job then?
The poet's job is to indicate the path between reality and their souls. He's the bridge between the concrete world and our spiritual understanding of it.
So the poet is an essential guide for the democratic citizen, helping them find their place in this huge, contradictory world.
Absolutely. The poet is the equalizer of his age and land. He's the arbiter of the diverse, the one figure who can absorb and reconcile all the contradictions of the new nation. Whitman says the poet supplies what wants supplying and checks what wants checking.
Like a national conscience.
Exactly, but a conscience that judges through inclusion, not exclusion.
Yeah.
And this is where he becomes so modern. His poet has to embrace science.
Yeah, this part is amazing. He refuses to separate art from empirical knowledge. He believed the anatomist, chemist, astronomer, and geologist are the lawgivers of poets.
The scientific facts are the poetic law. That's a complete inversion of the Romantic tradition.
Completely.
He argues that the knowledge from these disciplines, their construction, has to underlie the structure of every perfect poem. For him, science is the path to truth, so the highest compliment poetry can pay the universe is to recognize those truths. The beauty of poems, he said, is just the final applause of science.
This fusion of the spiritual and the scientific, that's the engine of his whole revolution.
It is.
So if poet's job is to define America, he has to start by defining the American self.
Yeah.
And this takes us to what was maybe the most shocking part of Leaves of Grass, the radical self, the I.
It kicks off with a declaration that's still pretty jarring today. But in 1855, it was just seen as the absolute height of arrogance. The famous opening, "I celebrate myself, and what I assume you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you."
That I is just so loud, and the reaction was immediately negative. I read that Nathaniel Hawthorne's son and many others were just appalled by what they called his tremendous and off-putting egotism.
They felt he was just sprawling incontinently before us. It was seen as totally uncivilized.
But it was a deliberate shock tactic, wasn't it? It wasn't just narcissism.
No, not in the way we think of it. His goal wasn't just to celebrate Walt Whitman. It was to use his own liberated self as a template for your liberation for the readers. He's saying, I am a model of what you can be.
An independent consciousness. So it's an ego that's meant to be shared. How does he make that clear, that you're not just supposed to follow him blindly?
He gives a direct instruction right there in the poem. He demands you think for yourself. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from any. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself. The I is just the starting point. The journey is yours.
And what's wild is that this huge self-declaration comes from a totally anonymous author at first. The sources point out that he doesn't actually name himself until halfway through the 1855 edition.
And when he does, the moment is just seismic. He proclaims, Walt Whitman, an American, one of the roughs, a cosmos.
A cosmos.
He sees himself as a whole universe, capable of holding everything, and that identity is completely fused with the American Democratic Project.
And that expansive self immediately gets translated into a radical embrace of the physical body. This was probably the single most scandalous part for his Victorian readers.
The idea that the body and soul were equal was non-negotiable for him. He writes, I have said that the soul is not more than the body, and I have said that the body is not more than the soul. That is a direct shot at centuries of religious tradition that shamed the flesh.
And he makes it poetic. A physiology from top to toe I sing. The female equally with the male I sing. The actual biological mechanism of life is worthy of the highest art.
And this is where he really pushed the boundaries. By embracing the body, he opened the door to sensuality and all the forbidden voices of the time. The sources point to the Calamus poems, which explored this deep, passionate affection between men.
Which makes him one of the very first American poets to even touch that theme openly. The audacity is just incredible for the time.
And it wasn't just same-sex intimacy, it was heterosexual passion, too. Poems like A Woman Waits for Me were so explicit that they were part of the reason Leaves of Grass was banned in Boston in 1882 for obscenity. He just insists on the naturalness of it all. Copulation is no more rank to me than death is.
He just strips away all the shame. And this brings us to some of those really visceral quotes he uses to shock you into recognizing the divinity of the body.
They are so intense, he writes. The scent of these armpits aroma finer than prayer. This head more than churches, Bibles, and all the creeds.
Okay, let's pause on that. The armpit line. That is so provocative. Why that specific image? And why not a heart or an eye?
Because the armpit, the scent, it's primal, it's involuntary. It's often something people are ashamed of or try to hide. By elevating something so base, so animalistic, he's making a point that nothing in the human experience can be considered profane.
He's saying your most natural, unwashed self is holier than a manufactured sermon.
Exactly. He says, I dote on myself. There is that lot of me, and all so luscious. He just embraces it all.
And he extends that same visceral, unashamed embrace to the natural world. I'm thinking of the line about winds whose soft tickling genitals rub against me. He's sexualizing the entire landscape.
He's dissolving the barrier between man and nature, body and soul. Everything is just charged with this life force. And it's all part of this larger argument that if you want to build a real democracy, you first have to accept the totality of your physical self.
This radical self-acceptance becomes the launch pad for his political vision. This immense equality, the en masse.
Right. If his individual I can contain the universe, then it has to contain every single person in America. The inclusivity is just breathtaking. He insists, I am of every hue and caste am I, of every rank and religion.
And he gives this comprehensive census of the marginalized, the people who were completely ignored by polite poetry at the time.
You have to think about who he includes in 1855. He sings for the slave, the drudge of the cotton fields, and critically, the emptier of privies, the person with the most disgusting yet necessary job.
He embraces the drunkard, the schoolmistress, the Negro from Africa, the Chinese, the Hottentot. He just lists them all without judgment.
Which makes them equal partners in the poem and therefore in the nation. And then there's the prostitute with the pimple neck, who he refuses to laugh at or jeer. In a Victorian society obsessed with purity, that is an act of pure democratic compassion.
It's absolute inclusion. None shall escape me, he writes. This absorption of everyone is the real political work of the poem.
And he's arguing that this unified democracy isn't just held together by laws, it's secured by deep personal affection.
That's the core of his message of brotherhood. He says, "The dependence of liberty shall be lovers. The continuance of equality shall be comrades."
It's a profound statement. He's saying political freedom depends on emotional intimacy, and political fairness depends on personal trust. The sinews of the nation are these deep bonds between people.
And he uses this idea to try to bridge the huge divides opening up in the country, especially between North and South. He insists that a comrade from Massachusetts shall be a Missourian's comrade.
He just refuses to accept division. He takes on every regional identity, Yankee, Kentucky, and Hoosier, as part of his own integrated cosmos. He's trying to sing the nation together, right on the edge of its greatest conflict.
So moving from that intimate self to the collective, Whitman completely redefines where you can find beauty. Before him, poetry was often about idealized nature forests, mountains.
Right. But for Whitman, the city, the common workplace, these were just as sacred. He was really the first urban bard.
He was just captivated by the energy of the American city. He was the first writer to really dive into street culture, to embrace the chaos and find beauty there.
And New York, or Manhattan as he called it, was the center of his poetic universe. He saw it as the crucible of the future. He calls it the city of the world. For all races are here.
And that amazing line, proud and passionate, city meddlesome, mad, extravagant city.
That energy is still so much a part of New York's identity. It's why his words are literally built into the city's infrastructure. You can find lines from crossing Brooklyn Ferry hammered into the balustrade at the Fulton Ferry Landing.
His poetic vision is physically part of the modern landscape. And his gaze, it wasn't on the wealthy or the famous, it was always on labor, on the common person.
He saw eternal meaning in every job. He celebrated all occupations, duties broad and close, and he found this huge spiritual significance in the labor of engines and trades.
This is where his famous catalogs come in, where he just rapid fires these descriptions of working people.
He lists the carpenter with his foreplane, the duck shooter, the drawer printer.
Let's pull out a couple of examples. He celebrates the firemen in their clean-setting trousers, which recognizes their heroism.
And he singles out the young mechanic who he says is closest to me. Why the mechanic? Because he represents the future, the practical application of democratic ingenuity.
That attention to immediate contemporary life reflects his fascination with the technology of his time, especially photography.
Yes, the sources talk a lot about the daguerreotype. He even includes the moment when the camera and plate are prepared, the lady must sit for her daguerreotype. Broadway was lined with these photo studios, and he saw photography as this new democratic way of capturing the individual eye and the en masse.
And just as he didn't shy away from the body, he didn't shy away from the dark realities of the city. He captured the downtrodden with that same impartial gaze.
He observes the opium eater reclines with rigid head and just open lips. And that's not a moral judgment, it's just a careful observation. We know from sources that opium use was rampant in places like 5 Points at the time.
He includes the addict, the prostitute, the lowest laborers. He forces you to see the whole picture.
Because he says, I am not the poet of goodness only. I do not decline to be the poet of wickedness also. He embraces the darkness right along with the light.
And this immersive vision, this attempt to contain all of America, it was tested to its absolute limit by the Civil War.
He didn't just write about the war, he lived it. He called it the real parturition years of the Union, the real birth pangs.
That experience completely changed the course of Leaves of Grass. He quit journalism after he went searching for his wounded brother in late 1862. He ended up staying in D.C. as a government clerk and, most importantly, as a volunteer hospital nurse.
And his early war poems had this almost romantic, enthusiastic call to arms. He wrote of the mechanics arming, dropping their tools in a rush to go fight.
But the reality he found in the hospitals, which he captured in drum taps, is just a devastating counterpoint to that enthusiasm.
The grim realism is just relentless. He describes the smell of ether and blood and the truly awful sound of the hiss of the surgeon's knife and the gnawing teeth of his saw. He sees these formless stacks of bodies.
And he internalizes all that agony. He writes, I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person. He takes that suffering into his own cosmos.
And that profound empathy, born in those hospital wards, is what ultimately allows him to envision peace. When the war ends, he describes the armies melting away, soft as breaking night and sure as dawn.
And the soldiers return, not to rest, but to a different kind of war. The saner wars, sweet wars, life-giving wars of labor, the focus shifts back to creation.
And at the center of this whole tragic period is Abraham Lincoln. He was the embodiment of both the promise and the devastating cost of the Union. And Whitman's mourning for him is captured in that incredible elegy, When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed.
One of the greatest pieces of memorial literature ever written. What were the specific symbols he used to process that national grief?
The poem is built around three main symbols for his Redeemer president. First, there's the lilac, which blooms every spring, representing perpetual memory.
Okay.
Second, the drooping western star. He thought it was Venus or Jupiter, which he saw as a symbol of the fallen political ideal. And third, just the simple thought of him I love, the deeply personal connection.
And that personal connection was real. He viewed Lincoln as the nation's first great martyr chief.
He did. Sources say he first saw Lincoln in New York in 1861 and later in D.C. He would literally wait outside the White House just to catch a glimpse of him passing by. For Whitman, Lincoln was the perfect symbol of his own supreme values, the rough, self-made man who held the nation together through sheer democratic will.
So for Whitman, this whole physical world, the city, the war, the body, it's all just the surface, the temporary form. The real deep dive has to lead us to the immortal self. Which brings us to this beautiful, complex idea he introduces, the eidolon.
Eidolon. It's a Greek word. It's usually translated as image or phantom, but Whitman completely reclaims it. He transforms it into this idea of the permanent, authentic inner body, the true self that exists underneath the physical form.
So the body we see is just a vessel for the real, enduring identity.
Exactly. He calls it the only purport of the form thou art, the real I myself, an image, an eidolon. It's the lasting essence that floats free of the physical body. It's the accumulation of all your experiences, stripped of material constraints.
And that philosophical framework gives him this incredible power to face death. If the true self is the eidolon, then death is just a change of state.
His acceptance of death is so remarkable. It's a total defiance of fear. He says, "And as to you, death, and you bitter hug of mortality, it is idle to try to alarm me."
It's like he's challenging the Grim Reaper directly. And he backs it up with one of his most startling but also logical claims about what happens to the body.
The line that stops everyone in their tracks, his view on the function of the dead. "And as to you, corpse, I think you are good manure, but that does not offend me."
That is so visceral, so chemical, it's incredibly modern, but he treats it with this spiritual reverence. Why doesn't the idea of becoming good manure offend him?
Because for him, it's the ultimate proof of continuous life. Death isn't an end. It's a perpetual transfer and promotion back into the cycle. He sees it everywhere, in the stars of heaven, the grass of graves. The physical body serves the democratic purpose of fueling future life.
He provides this absolute assurance. He says heavenly death itself is well provided for. It's just a mechanism for relief and escape.
So if death is just a transfer, the next logical question is, where is the soul's journey headed? What's the destination?
He gets at that in Passage to India, and it's not a real place, is it?
No, the goal is passage to more than India. It's a voyage of realization. It's a journey to fuse nature and man through the consciousness of the poet, to connect all of human history back to a unified whole. It's the completion of the individual cosmos.
But he wasn't just a blind optimist. He was deeply intelligent, and he faced these profound intellectual doubts. The poem of The Terrible Doubt of Appearances really gets into that.
It raises that terrifying existential question, is any of this real? He wonders if the world we see is nothing more than only apparitions, and that the real something has yet to be known. It's the ultimate doubt. Is reality just an illusion?
And the only thing that answers that huge, paralyzing question isn't logic or philosophy.
No. The solution is intimate human connection. It's the assurance he finds in love and friendship. The answer comes when a lover sits a long while holding me by the hand. And in that moment, he is charged with untold and untellable wisdom.
That is such a stunning insight. He can walk away from the biggest philosophical problem because human touch provides a certainty that intellect just can't.
Exactly. He's satisfied. He walks away indifferent to the problem. Love and friendship are the only certain kelson, the central structural beam of creation.
So having found that peace, that assurance, the poem Song of Myself, ends with this ultimate invitation for the reader to join him on this eternal journey.
It's the final road trip. He invites you, the listener, to tramp a perpetual journey, pointing you toward the landscapes of continents and the public road, urging you to go gaily with their youth and sublime old age.
And he really stresses the independence of this path. It's a crucial democratic instruction.
He says, "Not I, not anyone else can travel that road for you. You must travel it for yourself. He's the guide, but he won't carry you. You have to become your own pioneer."
And it all leads to that simple, profound answer to the universe's hardest question. He asks, what good amid these, O me, O life?
And the response is the summation of his entire democratic project. That you are here, that life exists, an identity, that the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse.
Whitman's real legacy is that he deliberately left the work unfinished. He knew the democracy he was prophesying was only in beginning only. He was laying the foundation, not building the whole house.
He knew he was just writing one or two indicative words for the future, and he put the real responsibility on the poets to come, orators, singers, musicians to come. He was the pioneer. They had to justify his vision.
He says, the paths to the house I seek to make, but leave to those to come the house itself. He gives us the floor plans, but we have to build it and live in it.
And he makes this very grand, deliberate exit at the end of Song of Myself. The poem itself just stops. There's no period. He leaves the ending hanging, he turns a casual look upon you, and then averts his face, leaving it to you to prove and define it. He stays ever a step ahead.
He doesn't want you to find him. He wants you to find yourself. And this brings us back to you, the listener, and the provocative thought he leaves us with. He never intended this book just for the literary elite.
No, he challenges everyone to engage with it. He asks, WHO learns my lesson complete. Boss and journeyman and apprentice? Churchman and atheist? The stupid and the wise thinker? He refuses to categorize who is worthy. Everyone has to confront it.
And the core command he gives the reader is just an act of radical honesty. He instructs us to re-examine all you have been told at school or church or in any book, dismiss whatever insults your own soul.
Just think about what that requires in practice. It's a profound, maybe even painful audit of your own beliefs. If something you were taught by any authority conflicts with your deepest, most authentic self, your idol in Whitman commands you to throw it away.
He saw himself as the arbiter of the diverse, someone who could contain all the contradictions. The soldier and the nurse, the debauched and the divine. His work refuses to reject any part of America, insisting that the only way forward is to sing the songs of the whole thing, the good and the ugly.
So if the great American poet insists on absorbing and singing all the diverse, contradictory elements of American identity, the chaos, the vulgarity, the glory, the shame, the challenge he leaves us with, that blank space at the end of his song is this. What contemporary, diverse, and contradictory elements of the world today are you still unwilling to absorb and sing? What insults your soul, and what are you ready to dismiss in order to finally define your own true cosmos? That is the unfinished lesson of the pioneer.